I didn't go to the Navy ball expecting applause. I didn't go expecting anyone to know who I was. I went because my fiancé asked me to go, because it mattered to him, and because I've learned that sometimes you show up for people even when you're tired, even when the week has already taken everything out of you. I wore my formal dress uniform, pressed so sharply it felt like it could cut paper. Hair tied back, clean, simple. The kind of look that says you respect the room before you ever speak in it. I checked the mirror once, not for vanity, but for discipline. The same discipline that had carried me through long nights and short sleep, through problems other people didn't even notice until they became emergency. Evan was already waiting in the living room, adjusting his tie like the knot had personally offended him. He looked good. He always did. Broad shoulders, nervous smile, that soft energy that made people want to forgive him, even when he didn't deserve it. "You look incredible," he said. "So do you," I replied, and I meant it. "Just breathe. It's a ball, not a tribunal." He laughed, but it came out then. My family's going to be there. And there it was. The real reason his shoulders were tight. Evan's family didn't hate me. Not openly. They were too polished for that. They were the kind of people who smiled while sharpening the blade behind their teeth. The kind who believed they were being honest when they were really just being cruel in formal clothing. They had one favorite way to describe me when they thought I couldn't hear. Support. Not real Navy. Not impressive. Not exciting. Not worth taking seriously. As if the difference between a smooth operation and a disaster was somehow less heroic because it happened behind a desk. On a watch floor, on the phone, and a chain of emails, and quiet decisions made under pressure. Evan offered his arm. "Ready?" I slid my hand through his. Always. The venue was already glowing when we arrived. Strings of lights, tall banner, a backdrop with Navy insignia and the year of the celebration. The sound of a band warming up. The hum of conversations that felt like waves, constant, layered, and loud enough to swallow anyone who didn't know how to stand their ground. Inside, it was a sea of formal wear and uniforms. Couples laughing, groups taking pictures, the smell of dinner and perfume, the shine of polished shoes, the clink of glasses. A big screen near the stage rotated through photos. Ships at sea, sailors in formation, families hugging at homecomings, flags snapping in the wind. And there, at the center of it all, Evan's family. His mother spotted us first, Marlene. Perfect hair, perfect smile, perfect posture. Her dress was expensive in a way that didn't need to announce itself. She looked like she'd never hurried for anything in her life. She opened her arms for Evan. "Sweetheart." He stepped into the hug like a man walking into a warm trap. She held him a beat too long, then pulled back and looked at me. "Maya," she said, as if testing the name in her mouth to see if it fit. "Marlene," I replied, calm and polite. Her eyes scanned me from collar to shoes, not openly enough to call it rude, but not subtly enough to pretend it wasn't happening. She smiled anyway. "You decided to wear that?" she said. "It's the uniform," I answered. "Well, yes." She tilted her head. "Of course. I just mean it's very official." Evan's sister appeared at Marlene's side, holding a champagne flute like it was a microphone. Tessa. She'd been a cheerleader in high school and never stopped performing. "Wow," Tessa said, leaning closer to Evan. "She looks like she's about to arrest someone." Evan chuckled automatically, like he always did when his family made jokes at someone else's expense. Then he glanced at me as if checking whether I'd take it personally. I didn't smile, but I didn't flinch either. "Only if someone gives me a reason," Tessa blinked, then laughed too loudly. "Oh, she's feisty." Marlene turned to someone behind her. "Claire, come over here." And then Claire arrived. Claire was the kind of woman who looked like she belonged in a recruiting poster. Perfect teeth, perfect posture, perfect confidence. Her dress was navy blue, which felt intentional. Her father, I knew, was a senior officer on base. Claire had grown up in this world, in the hierarchy of titles and seating charts, and knowing exactly who mattered and why. She hugged Evan like she'd done it 100 times. Maybe she had. "Evan," she said warmly, "I was hoping you'd come." Then she looked at me, and the warmth cooled by a few degrees. Maya, she said, like a courtesy. Claire, I replied. Her gaze flicked to my uniform insignia and back to my face. So your support? There it was, not even disguised. I kept my voice even. I'm an officer. Claire smiled like I'd said something adorable. Right, but I mean, what do you actually do? Like, what's your thing? My thing. Evan shifted beside me. Maya does operations, he said, and that was technically correct, but it sounded small coming out of his mouth. Like he was describing an office job. Marlene sipped her drink. Well, that's important too, she said, the way people say participation trophies matter too. Tessa leaned in with a grin. So you're the one who makes spreadsheets while the real action happens? The real action. I looked at Evan. He looked away. I felt the familiar pressure rise in my chest, the urge to correct, to explain, to defend the value of what I did. But I'd learned something about rooms like this. You don't argue with people who came here to win a social game. They'll twist anything you say into another joke. So I did what I always did under pressure. I stayed calm. I stayed precise. I make sure people have what they need, I said. So the mission doesn't fail. Claire raised her eyebrows, amused. Ah, that's sweet, sweet. Marlene clapped her hands softly. Anyway, let's get to our table. They saved us a good spot. We followed them through the crowd, Evan and I walking behind like a slightly inconvenient accessory to the family's evening. I noticed the table number as we approached, close to the stage. Prime placement. Marlene's world was built on being seen. There were place cards arranged neatly. I spotted Evan's next to his mother. Of course, I looked for mine. It wasn't there. I waited, giving them a chance to correct it, to say, oh, sorry, we forgot. But Marlene didn't even pretend to search. Oh, she said, glancing at me like she'd just noticed the issue. They must have made a mistake. These seating charts are always a mess. Tessa's smile widened. There are extra seats at the other table near the back. I saw them earlier, near the back. In a room this big, that meant the outskirts. The place where the music was louder than the conversation and the people in charge didn't bother looking. Evan opened his mouth, then closed it. He looked torn, like a man trying to decide whether discomfort was worth conflict. Marlene touched his arm. Evan, honey, you should sit here. You're with your family. Claire slid smoothly into the seat beside Evan's, like she'd been assigned there by fate. I could have made a scene. I could have said loudly that I was his fiancé and my name deserved a place card. I could have demanded respect. But I didn't, because the truth is, I wanted to see how far they'd go when they thought I would stay quiet. I leaned in slightly toward Evan and spoke softly, so only he could hear. It's okay. Go ahead. His eyes flashed with relief, which stung more than any insult. I'll be fine, I added, and I meant it. Not because I was fine with being disrespected, but because I knew how to survive rooms that weren't built for me. I walked away before anyone could offer me fake sympathy. The back table was a mix of people who didn't fit neatly into the polished front row World Junior service members. A couple of older couples who looked like they were there for tradition, and a few civilians who seemed a little overwhelmed by the formality. A young sailor stood when I approached, nervous. Ma'am, do you need a seat? Thank you, I said, and took the chair he offered. His face relaxed a little. Yes, ma'am. That simple respect, nothing dramatic, nothing flashy felt more real than everything at Marlene's table. Dinner began. Speeches started. The band played softly, and Evan's family made sure I could still hear them, even from the back. I caught fragments floating through the room like smoke. She's just support, not even the exciting kind. He could do better. Imagine marrying into this, and then you're stuck with paperwork. Every time I heard it, I felt the pressure in my chest tighten. Not rage, not panic. Just that cold, steady awareness that some people will always believe value is measured by spectacle. Between courses, Evan came to check on me. He crouched beside my chair, lowering his voice like he was doing me a favor by being discreet. Are you okay? He asked. I looked at him, really looked. His eyes held concern, but behind it was something else. Fear of confrontation, fear of upsetting his mother, fear of making the night awkward. I'm here, I said. I showed up. He nodded quickly. I'll talk to them after the program. After the program. Always later. Always. I watched him walk away and return to the front table, where Claire leaned in close to him as if she had every right. I sat back and listened to the room. A server passed by with a tray of drink. A couple nearby argued quietly about whether they should stay for the dancing. The young sailor next to me, barely old enough to shave, kept glancing toward the stage like he wanted to memorize everything. What's your name? I asked him gently. He blinked. Seaman Ortega, ma'am. Ortega, I repeated. First ball? Yes, ma'am, he said, smiling now. Feels big. It is big, I said. But it's just a room. Don't let it make you smaller. His smile faltered like he didn't expect encouragement from a stranger. Then my phone buzzed. One message. Unknown number at first glance, but the tone was familiar. Maya, don't leave early. I stared at it. My thumb hovered. Then another message came through. Same number. Guest of honor wants you present for the program. I didn't respond. I didn't need to. I simply slipped my phone back into my pocket and kept my face neutral. But inside something settled, like a weight shifting into place. The program continued. The lights dimmed slightly. The room's attention turned to the stage. The MC announced the guest of honor, a rear admiral assigned to the region, a leader with enough presence to quiet a ballroom with a few steps. He walked up to the podium without hurry, without drama, just quiet authority. Applause rolled through the room like surf against a hull. He waited for it to fade, then spoke. He didn't shout. He didn't perform. His voice carried because he didn't waste words. He talked about service, about tradition, about what it means to wear the uniform, about families who support sailors and the sacrifices people don't see. He made a few jokes, gentle ones, the kind that made the crowd laugh without cutting anyone. Then he paused. And I want to say something about the word people use too easily. He said, support. The room shifted. I saw Marlene lean forward slightly, interested again. The Admiral continued. In the Navy, we love the visible parts, the ships, the jets, the ceremonies, the moments we can photograph. But the truth is, the Navy runs on what most people never see. He looked down at his notes, then back up. A few months ago, there was a situation, a medical emergency, time-sensitive, weather moving in, multiple moving pieces, and a lot of people doing the right thing. The ballroom was quiet now. Even the servers had slowed, as if they didn't want to interrupt. He went on, careful not to spill classified details, careful not to turn a real-world event into a Hollywood scene. But he gave enough. A sailor needed urgent care, he said. There was a window to move, a narrow one. Coordination mattered. Not bravado. Not ego. Coordination. I felt my pulse steady, the way it always did when someone started describing a situation I recognized. The kind of pressure that either breaks people or sharpens them. The Admiral's gaze swept the room. And the person who made sure the right calls happened at the right time, he said, was not the loudest person in the room. She wasn't the one giving speeches. She wasn't even the one who would get credit in a headline. But she did what professionals do. He paused. She stayed calm. She connected the dots. She made sure every team had what they needed. And because of that, the outcome changed. He leaned slightly toward the microphone. Lieutenant Maya Reed, he said clearly. Would you please stand? For half a second, my body didn't move. Not because I didn't hear him. Because I felt the weight of the entire room suddenly searching for me. I rose slowly, controlled, like I was standing on a watch floor, not in a ballroom full of people who had decided I didn't matter 10 minutes ago. A spotlight swept toward the back. I saw heads turn in waves, confusion, surprise, curiosity. I saw Evan's face snap toward me, stunned. I saw Marlene's smile freeze like someone had paused her. I saw Claire's posture stiffen, her eyes narrowing slightly, like she was trying to recalculate the entire night. The Admiral nodded once when he saw me standing. Lieutenant Reed is part of an operations team that most people never meet, he said. But let me be clear. When you're trying to move fast in a complicated system, support is not a small thing. It's the difference between success and failure. He lifted a small object from the podium, something modest, like a coin or a simple letter folder. Not flashy, not theatrical, just a symbol. Lieutenant Reed, he said, your professionalism mattered, your discipline mattered, and your work represents the kind of service we should all respect. He paused again, and his voice turned slightly sharper, not angry, just unmistakably direct. And anyone who thinks support is less important than action has never had to solve a problem. When the clock is running out, a ripple of laughter moved through the room, but it wasn't mocking. It was the kind of laughter that comes with recognition because people knew exactly what he meant. Lieutenant Reed, he said, thank you. Applause erupted. Real applause. The kind you can feel in your ribs. I didn't smile wide. I didn't wave. I didn't make a show of it. I simply nodded once because I wasn't there for approval. But I won't pretend it didn't feel like oxygen after being held underwater. The Admiral gestured lightly. Please remain standing for a moment. He turned his attention back to the room. Tonight, he said, as you celebrate, I ask you to remember something simple. Respect isn't about spotlight. It's about contribution. And you don't always know who's holding the whole thing up until you try to take them for granted. Then he moved on with the program, as if he hadn't just flipped the social hierarchy of the ballroom upside down in 15 seconds. I sat down when he indicated my movement steady. But my world had changed. Not because I suddenly became valuable, because the room could no longer pretend I wasn't. The next few minutes passed like a dream with sharper edges. People turned to look back at me. Some smiled awkwardly. Some whispered. Seaman Ortega beside me looks like he might faint. Ma'am, that was you. I nodded gently. It was a team. He shook his head, eyes wide. Still, wow. I watched the front table. Evan was still staring at me like he was seeing a new person. Like he'd never bothered to imagine that the quiet parts of my life mattered. Marlene's face had tightened, but she tried to recover. She leaned toward someone, whispered something with a laugh, but it didn't land the way it had earlier. Her power was slipping, and she could feel it. Claire's smile had disappeared completely. The program ended. The lights rose. The music shifted from formal to festive. And suddenly, the people who had acted like I didn't exist wanted to find me. It started with Evan. He reached me first, moving quickly through the crowd. Maya, he said, breathless. Why didn't you tell me? I looked at him. Tell you what? That you, he glanced around, lowering his voice, that you were that important. That important. I held his gaze. I'm not a headline, Evan. That doesn't mean my work doesn't matter. He swallowed. You didn't mean to let them treat me like an extra? I asked softly. His face flushed. I thought it was just jokes. Jokes land differently when you're the only one being laughed at, I said. He opened his mouth, then closed it again. Then Marlene arrived, moving with that practiced grace, holding her drink like a shield. Maya, she said, voice too bright. That was wonderful. We had no idea. As if the insult had been ignorance, not contempt. I'm glad you enjoyed the speech, I replied. She blinked at my tone. Well, of course, we're proud. You should have told us you were support, I offered, calm. Her smile twitched. I didn't mean it like that. Tessa appeared behind her, suddenly cautious. Yeah, Maya, we were just messing around. Claire stood a few steps away, pretending to be engaged in another conversation while listening to every word. Marlene leaned closer, lowering her voice. We should move you to our table now. People saw you back there. It looks what? I asked. She hesitated, then decided on a safer word. It looks improper. Improper. Not the disrespect. Not the cruelty, the optics. I nodded slowly. No, I'm fine where I am. Her eyes hardened for a fraction of a second. Then she forced another smile. Well, if you insist. Evan touched my arm. Maya, please. Let's talk somewhere quieter. I looked at his hand on my sleeve and felt something settle again. Not anger, not sadness, clarity. Sure, I said. Let's talk. We stepped a little away from the crowd, to the edge of the ballroom where the music was softer. The lights reflected off the floor. People danced, laughed, Pretend that the night hadn't just drawn a line through certain relationships. Evan exhaled. I'm sorry, I waited. I should have said something, he continued. I should have fixed the seating. I should have shut them down. I didn't want to make it a thing. I nodded. You didn't want to make it uncomfortable. Yes, he said quickly. Exactly. And you were okay with me being uncomfortable instead? I said. His face fell. I didn't think. That's the problem, I said, voice calm, not loud. You didn't think? Not about what it feels like to stand in a room full of people who decided you're less than them. Evan's eyes glistened slightly. I didn't know it was that bad. I almost laughed. Not because it was funny, but because it was so predictable. You heard them, I said. You saw them. He looked away. They're my family, and I was supposed to be your future, I said. Silence. Behind us, the music swelled into something romantic, like the room wanted to mock the moment. Evan swallowed. What do you want me to do? I took a slow breath, in, out, the way I did when a situation demanded control. I want you to understand something, I said. Tonight, you watched the room change its mind about me because someone with rank validated me. That should scare you. He frowned. Why? Because it means their respect isn't about who I am, I said. It's about who they think I can benefit. His shoulders slumped. I don't want to marry into a family that measures worth like that, I continued. And I don't want to marry a man who waits for someone else to tell him I'm worth defending. Evan's breath caught. Maya. I lifted a hand gently, stopping him. Don't. Not yet. He looked like he wanted to argue, to bargain, to promise he'd change. The look people get when they realize they might actually lose something they assumed would always be there. I love you, he said quietly. I nodded. I believe you. His eyes brightened with hope. But love isn't the same as loyalty, I said. Love isn't the same as courage. His face crumpled slightly. I can be patient with a lot, I continued. I can teach. I can forgive. But I won't shrink to make your mother comfortable. And I won't keep swallowing disrespect just because you're scared of conflict. Evan's voice shook. I can fix it. Can you? I asked softly. Or are you just saying that because you saw what happened up there and now you're afraid of looking like the guy who didn't appreciate his fiancé? That hit him like a wave. He didn't answer because even he didn't know. I reached into my pocket and felt the ring box. Not because I wanted to punish him. Not because I wanted drama. Because I wanted truth. I pulled it out and placed it in his palm. Evan stared at it, horrified. What are you doing? I'm making sure this decision is based on reality, I said. Not pressure, not optics. Not a ballroom full of people watching. He shook his head rapidly. No, Maya, please. You can have it back, I said. Not forever. Not as a breakup trophy, as a pause. A reset. His hands trembled. A pause? I nodded. If you want a future with me, it starts with you choosing me when no one is clapping, when your mother is frowning, when your sister is making jokes, when Claire is standing too close. I glanced past him slightly, and sure enough, Claire was watching from a careful distance, pretending she wasn't. Evan followed my gaze and stiffened. Tonight, I said, I heard what they said. I watched what you did. I watched what you didn't do. Evan's voice broke. I'm sorry. I know, I said. Then I stepped back. I'm going to leave, I told him. Not because I'm angry. Because I'm clear. Evan grabbed my wrist gently. Maya, please. Just give me a chance. I looked down at his hand, then back up into his face. You'll have a chance, I said. But it won't be in this room. And it won't be with your mother deciding the rules. He nodded slowly, tears in his eyes now. Okay. I freed my wrist carefully and turned. As I walked away, I passed Marlene again. She was laughing too loudly at something someone said, trying to reclaim her control. She glanced at me. Leaving already? I stopped, just long enough to meet her eyes. Yes, I said. She tilted her head. Well, congratulations again. Really? I didn't smile. Thank you, I replied. And just so we're clear, support is what keeps everything standing. Then I kept walking. Outside, the night air was cool, quiet, honest. I stood for a moment on the sidewalk, breathing, letting the noise of the ballroom fade behind me. My phone buzzed again. This time, it was a message from a familiar name. CO, proud of you tonight. Not for the applause, for staying composed. I exhaled, reading it twice, because that was the truth. It wasn't the Admiral saying my name that made me strong. It was the fact that even before anyone said it, even before anyone clapped, I already knew who I was. They called me just support. But support is what holds the line when everything else starts to break. And if someone can't respect that, whether they're wearing a gown or a suit or even a uniform, they don't deserve to stand beside me. Names and minor details are dramatized for storytelling. The lesson isn't wait for someone powerful to validate you. The lesson is never shrink yourself to fit someone else's comfort, because the right people won't need a spotlight to see your value.